Good afternoon. Is this ready? I was very impressed with the arguments today and the judges' attention, their mastery of the detail of the cases. This is a preliminary issue of significance. Even though the government attempted to waive it and let the case go to final decision, the justices felt like it is potential decisive issue that needed to be decided first. They appointed a good lawyer who argued the case and reached, they had a good hearing about it this morning. It's so impressive to me to see the court work, their mastery of the cases and the history of cases. Ours is a marvelous, magnificent legal system in my view. Sometimes it gets we see the trees instead of the forest, and when it comes to the power of the federal government, I think the courts have given too much deference to the power of the federal government and its reach, and that implicates dramatically this health care bill. So I just would say that I was honored to have the opportunity to be there. Senator Blunt and Senator Johnson, I know would want to comment with you, and I would yield to Senator Blunt. You want to be next?
Sure. Well, I'm pleased we're having this discussion, as Senator Sessions and Senator Johnson are as well. I agree with the over 70% of the American people that think that the federal government does not have the ability to force people to buy a product. And we'll see if the court agrees. Now, at the end of the day, if the court does agree, I'm still equally opposed to the direction we're headed in health care. I think, first of all, we couldn't afford it if it was really a good plan, and it happens to be a not very good plan that we can't afford. So whether it's constitutional or not, I'm still equally and adamantly opposed to moving forward with this view of health care, where government makes too many decisions, runs health care in too dramatic a way, and I think most of the American people, as they look at this, agree. You know, we have that famous statement from the Speaker, we'll know what's in the bill after we pass it. The truth is we won't know what this bill allows until it's implemented. There are all kinds of rules and regulations that would come down, almost all of which restrict the ability of the American people to direct their own health care. Maybe the big fundamental case before the court is whether or not the government can tell people they have to buy a product, they have to participate in a system, an insurance system they otherwise wouldn't participate in. And of course, if the government can tell people that, where's the line of what they couldn't tell people? And so there's a big constitutional question here, but once that constitutional question is resolved, then there's still even a greater question of whether or not we want the government to take over the health care decisions of the American people in the way that this bill will absolutely guarantee the government does. And so we're here at an important moment. No matter what the court decides, it may not be the final moment in a big debate about health care. There are lots of things we could do to make this system work better. You know, the false choice is not, well, we can go with the president's health care plan or we can do nothing. I don't know anybody that thinks we need to do nothing, but we'll see what the court thinks about this bill that nobody ever intended when the Senate voted on it over 2 years ago to become the law. This was a bill that was a vehicle to get to conference, to work with the House, and then finally produce a bill. That's why there's the famous severability clause, where the Congress always says if they think there's a chance that part of the law might be declared unconstitutional, they always say, well, the rest of the law could stand on its own without this. This bill does not have that provision in it. And so we'll see what the court decides this week. But I agree with Senator Sessions that this is a system that works in remarkable ways, and we'll see how it works over the next few days. Senator Johnson?
Thanks, Senator Blunt. I mean, it was fascinating. I'm not an attorney, I'm an accountant, I'm a business owner, and this is an incredibly important moment in our history. It is pivotal. And the question for the Supreme Court really has to do with our fundamental freedoms. And as I was preparing to attend this, reading my briefing materials, watching why this is occurring. The precedent upon which this case is based really dates back to 1942, Wickard versus Filburn. And it is a precedent that is freedom destroying. And that's what I think the American people need to understand. We need to wake up in terms of the issue that is at stake here. It is our freedoms that are at stake. To think that a wheat farmer back in 1942 could be deprived of the freedom to raise the amount of wheat he wanted to feed his family, and he was a chicken farmer and feed his chickens. He was denied that opportunity in a unanimous decision. And now we're here. I described it as we're almost collectively experiencing the Stockholm Syndrome, where we're just begging the federal government to please leave us a shred of freedom. Please. Don't make us buy a product that we don't want to buy. Is that asking too much? So no, this is an incredibly important day. I was very pleased I could actually be a part of that history, and I am praying that the Supreme Court rules properly that this law is unconstitutional. Thank you.
Senator, could you talk a little bit about what you are hoping to accomplish by actually attending?
Well, I didn't attend, so I'm going to let one of the two of
Well,
them explain.
I'm sorry.
you know, I was reporters asked me last week, were you attending? I didn't really plan to, and Senator McConnell said, I have a pass, would you like to go? I said, yeah, maybe I will. So it just was a very interesting argument, but there are issues, as Senator Johnson said, that are very deep and very important, that can shape the future of America. This government, this central government, is a government of limited powers, delegated powers. All power is not delegated to the central government or reserved to the states and the people. That is so fundamental, and so this is going to be a challenge to this court to move away from the idea that anything the federal government wants to do, it's empowered to do. That is not so. There are limited powers this federal government has, and it will be interesting to see how it comes out. So it was an honor to be a part of the history.
Well, I really wanted to attend. This is the reason I ran for the United States Senate, because of freedom. And if you remember back in summer 2009, President Obama pretty famously held a press conference and said that, you know, these doctors, they'll take out a set of tonsils for a few extra bucks. Maybe an unkind paraphrase, but that's basically what he meant. Well, I was offended by that because our first child, our daughter Carrie, was saved by those medical professionals. She was born with a serious congenital heart defect. The first day of life, a doctor came in at 1:30 in the morning and saved her life. And then 8 months later, when her heart was the size of a small plum, another incredibly skilled and dedicated team of medical professionals, in 7 hours of open heart surgery, reconstructed the upper chamber of her heart. Her heart operates backwards now. But she's 28 years old and she's a nurse herself in a neonatal intensive care unit because my wife and I had the freedom. We had the freedom to seek out the most advanced surgical treatment at the time. That's what's at stake here. If this health care law is fully implemented, it is going to reduce the quality of our health care. It is going to lead to rationing. The types of medical innovation that saved my daughter's life and millions of other Americans will be severely limited. And oh, by the way, it'll bankrupt this nation. So now I was begging to be able to be in that courtroom on this very historic day for freedom. Thank you.
Senator Sessions,
go ahead.
so the general sentiment is even if the court finds this law to be constitutional, that it's still bad policy and it's worth arguing over again. To what extent does what the Supreme Court does do over the next few days dictate what Republican strategy might be moving forward on the health care law?
Well, I would say, first of all, that the Supreme Court has a chance to make crystal clear, as a series of cases in recent years have, that there are limits on the Commerce Clause, in fact, limits on the power of the federal government. So I hope that they use that to do so. Also, I hope that they recognize those limits and knock down this law in its entirety. So I really think that's possible, because this is an unprecedented stretch of the power of the federal government to dictate that people participate in commerce, to make wheat, say you must grow wheat, as opposed to if you grow it, you somehow can be regulated. So I think it'd be an unprecedented thing, and where we'll go from here, otherwise I don't know, but Senator Blunt is correct about one thing. Whether or not the court says this line was crossed and the bill is unconstitutional or not. It is a monumental, historic insertion of federal power into 1/6 of the economy, the likes of which I think the American people clearly have indicated they do not favor and that they oppose. So the principle of the federal government overreach is alive in the political halls, whether or not legally the court so concludes.
But are you concerned that if they do find it and uphold it to be constitutional, that it might hurt that argument?
No, I don't. There are lots of things you can do that are constitutional that are not the right thing to do. There are all kinds of constitutional things the federal government can do that you wouldn't want the government to do. I have had some concern that we don't get so focused on whether it's constitutional or not that we forget about the argument of whether it's good policy or not. And I have no idea what the court will decide. I assume, like most of these decisions in this court, it'll be narrowly decided one way or another. But it could be constitutional and still be a really bad idea. It could be a good idea, but still be something we really can't afford. I happen to think it's the combination of the two. It's something we can't afford that's also a bad idea. And then if you add that third element, I think along with 70% of the people in the country that it's not constitutional, but all three of those are different arguments, and we need to be sure we're making all three of them. One is being made in the court right now, and it's drawn attention back to this really important thing that had kind of gotten off the center stage of the debate. And my guess is that's where the White House would prefer to have kept it. You know, on the 6-month anniversary of the signing this bill into law, there was a big celebration at the White House, a big media event. On the 1-year anniversary, there's a big media event. On the 2-year anniversary, there was no mention at all, and barely a mention in response to questions about moving forward with this new regulation of a significant part of the economy. And believe me, there's no way you change people's relationship to the government more dramatically than involving the government in their health care.
One more question.
Or not.
Senator Sessions, Senator Johnson, what was kind of the temperature in the room? Could you give us kind of a description of what it was like there, and maybe could you glean which direction the court might be going just by the questions they were asking?
You're the
lawyer.
The answer is no, I couldn't glean. It was hard to tell which direction the court was leading with their questions. I think some judges asked one question that may have seemed to be favoring one side, and then they'd ask another question that may have been perceived as favoring. But those who've watched the court over the years know that their questioning often is just testing the issues, clarifying their own thinking, seeing how the advocates respond as they formulate their own opinions. And I didn't pick up any direction there.
Thank you all.
Thank you.